Hello again, welcome to One Foot in the Wild. Yeah, now if you watched my last video, you know what I'm going to ask you. What was that tip that I did in the last video about making a seat? Yep, that's right. And for those that didn't see the last video, use a wax coat. Does the job pretty damn well. Right. It's going to be a cold one. Okay, now we've got a bit of wood to get done what we need to get done. Right. Welcome back. Oh dear. So tonight I've got some pork chops and a beef tomato. Ooh. Give that a little rinse. Rusty kettle. Tea. Book. And fire. And to fetch some logs. Bit of wee wood. So you might have been wondering what I've been pouring in my drink. So a while back I got a army ration packs, and these are 3-in-1 teas. They do the job. And then Twizzlers. That's everything I've got. Right. Let's get set up. You see, this time what we're gonna do, aim for some more straighter ground, which is fun round here. And we're going to use this tray, right, and we're going to put the wood continually under small twigs. That way then we can cook on the top and it's not going to overburn it, so it's going to be continual working, but it should produce some good food. Right, I'll bring you back in a bit. Right, yeah then, let's get this started. Ooh, that went quick. I could just tell the temperature difference straight away. Just lifted it up just a couple of degrees. So what was going to be happening is I've checked the weather forecast and it looks like it's going to get down to 3 degrees over the weekend. So one of days I'm going to try and get camping out and get a full video done, and hopefully I don't freeze too bad. I'm going to be taking very minimal gear, pretty much fit into I think a 35-litre rucksack I've got. So it's gonna be an interesting one. I know I'm gonna be cold, but getting hot. Look at them bad boys. So at the moment I've been taking a lot of anti-inflammatory foods. So it kind of means I've just broken my cardinal rule. Gloves on. So I've been having a lot of anti-inflammatory foods. Because I suffer with psoriasis. So just trying to do the healthy thing. Look after myself. But look at that. Oh yes. Yeah, let me bring you in. Look at that. Beautiful. Oh. Here we go. I'll mix it up. Next one. Beef tomato. There's nothing better than eating a beef tomato that's been barbecued. I think that's ready for another flipping. Uh-oh. Houston, we have a pork chop down. Right. Rest that on there. Let's blend that up. Oh. Well, the good thing is about this meal, it's also gluten-free. Ooh. Perfect. Uncooked. Look at that. Get in there. Mr. Magpie's coming down. Oh, that was nice. The tip is not to rush it. Put enough fuel on for fire to move across. Nature will do rest. Because I think fire is part of nature. Without fire, you know, you don't get regrowth. You know, you sometimes see massive fires going on, and then it's like you come back and it's just full of new life. Sometimes things have got to move on. Maybe not. I had a friend, really best friend, kind of lost her. It kind of sucks because we could talk about all kinds of things. First person I've ever met really that actually like gets me. I miss them conversations. wacky times though. Thing is, you can only put the energy there that people are going to give back. I don't know. I'm talking to myself. That was a mosquito then. Let's slap that one on as well. You've got a tomato? Well, it's the same tomato. I'm going to say it's the tomato friend. Still got a bit of a cough. Oh. Something's gonna hurt you, Dan. So that's done. Move this up. Give it a minute to cool down. Ooh. I just can't help it. It's just something about a hot tomato. Oh. Hot tomatoes. are like the best tasting thing in the world. Here, can you smell it? Oh. Oh. Beautiful. If you think about it as well, small little girl like this, it's like, I like to think, I like to get back to the old ways. It's one of the reasons why I'm wearing flat cap and stuff. It's just basically like trying to get back to the old ways of the knowledge that we're losing, because so many things at the moment are just forcing us to be consumers. And it's like, we used to be providers. You know, we used to be able to go out there and provide for ourselves. We used to be able to go out, make his own tea, you know, forage. I mean, back in the 1900s, I mean, I heard a story once, and I don't know if it's true, that it was cheaper during the Great Depression to buy pellets than it was to meat. So everybody around here started buying pellet guns, or just started living off the land. Isn't that wild and wacky? And then they introduced myxotosis to quell the rabbit population. Now that'll make you think for a second. People are starting to feed for themselves, look after themselves, provide. And then someone introduced a man-made virus into the animal population, which is absolutely cruel and horrible. Now, put me in a survival situation, or put me into a situation where I have to provide for myself. I'll get an animal and I'll eat it, I'll skin it, I'll cook it. But never would I want to put or give it an illness, or give anything ever an illness which literally like liquefies its organs. That's horrible. That's the horrible thing about myxotosis. I just started thinking of it because a few weeks back I was taking a walk and I came across one, a rabbit with mixing. Just horrible to see. Absolutely horrible. Anyway, I've absolutely crucified that. Anyway, oh, skin's peeled straight off. Oh. Beautiful. There's nothing. Yorkshire motto, that. Ooh. Right. I think it's time. Get another pork chop on. Ooh. It's hot, baby. It's hot. Here's some thought for you. If I'm going to be camping out, probably Sunday, if I'm going to be camping out in 3-degree weather, what should I eat? Bear in mind, this is the setup I'm taking. Leave a comment. Some ideas. I was thinking of just taking some sausage. Made some people laugh when I told them that. What did you do this weekend? I went into the woods and I ate some sausage. good thing is about pork chops in camping, they cook quick. That were a goose. Goose doing that here. Bit weird though. The beautiful thing about camping is that at first you're terrible at it. Keep persisting, keep going, you start developing a good skill set. There you go, darling. Yeah, that's cooked. That's cooked pretty well. Here. Look at that. Perfect. I also know I need some better video recording equipment as well. Monday. We could look meal like that. Bring you guys back in a bit. Hello again. So, took a while to reposition. Change the camera angle. So, just getting a blue on now. And, well, what it was, I brought these two FD logs with me. So, as you can see, I just wanted to make sure that these were accessible. Once this water boils, I'm going to go to big logs and just chill. And then I hope you're all ready for a bedtime story. So I'll be boring you all with my book again. Reading a couple of chapters. Chapter 14. The King's Cave. As well as the mountains, the west coast and the islands of Scotland have lots of boovies, which can be anything from an old open wooden structure to croft houses situated in remote places around the country. Boovies give hikers, kayakers, or any adventurer for that matter, respite from the rain and winds. They soon became my favourite places to sleep. Most of them are owned by the MBA, Mountain Bovie Association, and around once a year a group of people go to each one to make any repairs needed or just do general upkeep. Every time I knew I was approaching one, I was always incredibly excited, as there was something very special about them. In early April, Jet and I were walking the Isle of Bute, a relatively small, well-populated island around 15 miles long and around 3 miles in width. One afternoon we arrived at one particular bouvet that consisted of a small wooden hut with a compost toilet and a fire pit, mainly used by kayakers who would island hop from the mainland. We were both completely soaked, as it had rained seriously hard that day, The ground was totally sodden, and the dead wood I was hoping to make a fire with was completely unusual. Each piece I picked up would be rotten and immediately snap in half as soon as it left the ground. With very few small trees, driftwood would be my only chance. The tiny boothie came into view, and before even looking inside, I threw my bag down, ran to the shore, only 15 feet away, only to find no driftwood at all. I was absolutely gutted, as this would probably mean a couple of hours tracking back in the pissing rain to find whatever I could scatter along the shoreline. With no gas to cook, I made the decision to call it a day, strip off and eat what food I had with a cold coffee, rather than go on the hunt. I was soul destroyed. Then I turned around towards the boothie and noticed a pile of bone-dry wood stacked inside, leaned up against the wall. I couldn't believe it. Instead of a cold, wet night for Jet and me, this meant a warm meal, hot coffee, and the chance to dry all my clothes and Jet's soaked fur. Jet slept in the bottom of my sleeping bag every night. And so when her fur got wet, it was damp night for us both. I was so happy this wasn't the case tonight, and I wouldn't have to wake up tomorrow and put on soaking wet gear. I learned the boothie code immediately. If you use the wood that somebody else has made the effort to gather and leave for you, then make sure that night or the following day you replace it for the next people who came and may need it as much as you did. It was a great system, and one I would abide by in every boothie I used. The Isle of Boo now finished and back on the mainland, my next stretch would take me around another sea neck down towards Tinnabarrack and Kames, then on to Scotland's biggest sea loch, Loch Fyne. I loved the stretch down towards Kames. It was wild and gifted with the most beautiful coast path. It was easy to find firewood, and I did a lot of foraging on this section of the walk. I felt good, probably the strongest I had on my journey to date, but Loch Fyne would prove to be incredibly stressful. As I mentioned earlier, Scotland has a huge logging industry on the west coast in particular, and I would often see cut down pines piled onto the back of lorries destined for the south. The roads in these parts are main veins out of the highlands and can be absolutely treacherous. Sadly, one of these roads, one side stretching some 30 miles long, is right on the shoreline, with big hills on the opposite side. Alone, I could have banged this out easily in a couple of days, but there was no way that Chet could do that. The road was a main route for the trucks carrying the logs, and they would hurtle down so fast, leaving little room for Jet and me. It really was terrifying. In the end, I decided to wait out the daylight hours and walk at night so the roads were less busy, and I could hear any oncoming vehicles, giving us either time to scramble to the opposite side of the road or cling onto the rocks as they passed. Worse still, Jet had to be on the lead, which she hates, purposely slowing down in resistance, genuinely annoyed that I had to put her on it. I hated it too. To make matters worse, I could only carry so much food for Jet before my back would snap in half, meaning I had around 3 days to reach the next town or village in order to stock up. We made it into Inverary, exhausted, stressed, and soul destroyed. I gave us a day's rest before eventually making it into Lochicaphead, a bigger town where I could stock up with the £15 that I had on me, kindly gifted by a follower I'd met in a nearby village. It's safe to say that Jet and I were both completely, tired. It would be the first time that I'd feel incredibly guilty for having Jet on the walk with me. Another of life's precious lessons awaited me in the evening. I stayed in Lochicaphead. Growing my social media following was something I never really cared about, apart from the fact Ooh. Another of life's precious lessons awaited me in the evening I stayed in Logley Head. Growing my social media following was something I never really cared about, apart from the fact that it raised my donations. As always, no matter how tired I was, I made a huge effort to speak to people and promote the work under the charity of the SSAFA, and it was starting to grow more and more. I was getting more press attention all the time, and was starting to get recognised in pretty much all the small towns, villages and even hamlets I passed through. Messages had started to come in thick and fast, and it had got to the point where it was becoming impossible to reply and save my battery and data. One guy in particular, called Michael, who was in his 30s, had been trying to get in touch with me for a few months. He lived in Logley Head and had been sending me messages once or twice a week for the past 2 months, asking me if I could come and see him. When I arrived, he really wanted to meet Jet, and had also invited us to stay in his flat for the night. To be honest, I just wanted to eat and pitch my tent and rest for the evening, but given how persistent he'd been, if I did that, I'd feel really guilty. Jet pal, we need to go and see this guy or he'll never leave us alone. It's only a few K. Another half an hour tops. Let's just do it, and we can rest and go to sleep afterwards. So earlier that evening, I arrived to see Michael standing on the second floor of a balcony of a very well upkept flats. He waved and pointed us towards the stairs we needed to climb to get to his front door. I was relieved to discover he was softly spoken and in no way an intense human being. We didn't really speak for the first few minutes. He just kneeled stroking Jet, speaking to her like he had known her forever. I was impressed by how quickly she took to him, even following him into the flat, without checking me for a look of approval, as she normally would. We spent a good few hours chatting and laughing, talking about my adventure and also how wonderful dogs are. He made us feel relaxed, that I even admitted that I almost couldn't be asked to come up because we were so tired. And the last few days had been awful. I admired how calm he was, and noticed how intently he listened to every single word I said, and would always reply so genuinely. He is the first and last person Jet has had enough trust to lie down on their lap, and I joked to Michael that I felt completely betrayed, but equally I was incredibly happy to see her do it. After a few hours and a couple of coffees, uncontrollably yawning, I told Michael we had to go, as the evening was closing in and I wanted to pitch up before it got totally dark. He offered us the sofa for the night, but I politely declined, telling him we just wanted our own space to turn off the thinking for the evening. No problem, Chris, he said. I totally understand. As we were leaving, Michael walked into the kitchen and pulled from the cupboard some huge bandages. Bloody hell, mate. What are they for? I said, intrigued. He replied, it's for the pain. Would you like to take a couple for your lower back? I attempted to pick up your bag when you weren't looking. With all that weight, it must be ruined. I laughed. It's okay, you keep them. Hopefully by the time I'm 60, technology will have come on enough that I can nip to the chemist and buy a new spine. We said our goodbyes with a big man hug and a strong handshake, and I walked away down the steps from his flat that led directly to the coast. Late that evening, now camped up and fed, getting my head into my journal, I grabbed my phone to see what time it was, noticing that stuffed inside the inner pouch of my bum bag, which I'd put on the kitchen counter while at Michael's, was a folded piece of paper. It was a note. Chris, I really didn't want to say anything whilst you were here, so as to not make you feel awkward or feel sorry for me. But I'm not very well and haven't been for some time. I just want you to know that following you and Jet and watching you both never give up has been a real light in my life over the past 10 months. Make sure you don't take your hat off while you're on a walk. It's how we know and have come to love you. Good luck. Your now friend, Michael. I later found out that he was terminally ill with cancer. He was probably only in his 30s. Now it all made sense why Chet had stayed so close to him all evening. She knew he was ill. A few months later, while camped up in the Hebrides, I received a text message informing me that Michael had passed. I'd only met the man once, but would often think of him as he left such a lasting impression on both Jet and me. Sat in my tent, I vowed that from that moment on I would honour his wish and keep my hat on for the rest of the walk, regardless of the seasons. Sad but also happy that he was no longer in pain. That night I had learned a valuable lesson. There are too many people out there, probably more so on the social media, who whinge and whine about the most mundane, insignificant things. Even my problems were minuscule compared to what Michael must have gone through. Life is such an amazing gift and so short. He knew this, and I believe he made the most of the last few months on earth. He accepted his fate with such humility, and just went on being kind to everybody in the process. Wearing the hat would come to mean much more to me than just a promise. If I had a bad couple of days or just felt a bit sorry for myself, the hat would always remind me that I had nothing to complain about. So thank you, Michael. Rest in peace, my friend. For my next stage, from the top of Scotland's biggest sea loch, Loch Frayne, I had to head south, tackling the Mull of Kintyre, which involved walking 21 miles south to reach Tarbert, then another 28 miles south to reach Campbellton, followed by yet another 15 miles just to reach the most southern point of the Mull of Kintyre. Once I walked those 64 miles, I then had to swing around the corner and walk all the way back to the opposite side of the peninsula until I was level with the top of Loch Frayne again. In all, around 120 miles over 3 weeks, just in order to stick to the coastline, but without making any more progress northbound. To help put this into perspective, this is the equivalent of walking from the beginning of the Thames estuary near London directly across England until you hit the coast at the Bristol Channel. On the way down to Campbellton, we jumped aboard a ferry that took us to the Isle of Arran. I love this stretch, heading down past Campbellton to the very south of the Mull of Kintyre. I would spend the night camped behind the walls of the lighthouse. Once we had pitched, we climbed back up to find and visit the memorial of the Chinook helicopter that had flown over from Northern Ireland on 2nd of June 1994 and sadly ran into thick fog. Unable to see, the helicopter slammed into the hills, killing all 25 passengers and the 4 crew members on board. I sat and watched the sun next to the monument, once again reminding myself how fragile and precious life is. At times I'd get slightly annoyed at myself for ever getting so worked up about things that generally were not important. I made a toast with my cold coffee to all those on board and made my way back down to the tent ready for the good night's kip. I was chuffed to be on Arran, as it looked beautiful, 2,500 foot mountain peaks running through its centre, hence the name Mini Scotland, and a road that hugged the coast pretty much the entire way around, making it very easy walking. The island averages about 10 miles in width and nearly 20 miles in length. It's a haven for cyclists, relatively easy to circumnavigate in a day with some beautiful coastline to enjoy as you go. I love walking this coast. I was starting to get stopped by a lot of locals and tourists alike, who had either seen us in the papers or clocked us on social media. One of the people I met there was a woman called Shona and her children. In a few years to come, Shona would prove to be a huge help with my Instagram account, as my Facebook page alone had become too much to handle, let alone Instagram and Twitter. My real excitement here, though, was the history, and Jet and I ploughed on, eager to arrive at the famous King's Cave. The sandstone caves were given the name due to a Scottish hero, Robert de Bruce. Most of us have seen the film Braveheart and would normally associate this accolade with William Wallace. However, the film is widely known to be historically inaccurate. Not to diminish the valour of William Wallace, but the real Braveheart was in fact Robert de Bruce, King of Scotland. After the death of Wallace, de Bruce began the quest to reunite the clans of this proud and rugged country after years of English dominance in the north, subjugating the Scots to tyranny and injustice under the rule of England's kings, Edward Longshanks and his successor Edward II. De Bruce finally defeated the English at the Battle of Bannockburn, driving them out of Scotland once and for all. It was a monumental achievement, his attempt to reunite Scottish commoners and nobles to form an army strong enough to beat the English and regain the lands taken from them and taken years prior to this epic victory. And de Bruce had travelled far and wide across Scotland and its islands. No easy feat. After years of trying with little success, in 1307, de Bruce found himself in the Isle of Ran, having just lost a battle with another clan, which he wiped out most of his men. Retreating to what is now called the King's Cave, injured and demoralised, de Bruce looked up to the ceiling of the cave and fixated upon a spider. For hours he sat and watched the spider struggle, time after time, to swing from one side of the rock to the other side. Relentless in its will to reach the other side, the spider eventually made it, spending all night spinning the perfect web. The tenacity and determination inspired Robert de Bruce. Sorry about that. Spinning the perfect web. The tenacity and determination inspired Robert de Bruce to never give up and eventually succeeded in what, at the time, must have seemed an impossible quest: to beat the English back to where they came from. After his death, Robert de Bruce's heart was put inside a box and kept in a church for safekeeping, as a symbol of hope for Scotland, hence the name Braveheart. Beautiful song. After spending hours in the sandstone cave memorised by Iron Age carvings on the wall and many other fascinating historical carvings, including a sword that is said to have been carved by de Bruce himself, I got the roll mat out ready to sleep inside. Looking up at the roof, I tried to imagine what must he have been feeling, and what courage it must have taken, more so back in the days when life was so brutal and unfair, depending on your title or position in society. As I contemplated his feelings all those centuries ago, my thoughts soon turned to my own challenge. Although nowhere near as daunting a task, it was epic in its own way, and I smiled at the thought that I would never once had the notion of quitting the walk ever crossed my mind. I visualized the web and saw mine only half spun. I thought about the relentless perseverance of the spider, and how obstinately determined I too would have to be in the pursuit of my happiness and the challenges that still lay ahead on this walk in the months and years to come. It's always baffled me how these days many people ideas of heroes and idols, the celebrities, namely singers and actors. Mine had always been people like Wallace de Bruce, Shackleton, or anyone else who had the courage to achieve monumental feats of endurance while putting the lives of others before their own. I adored Iran and was said to be leaving, and was sad to be leaving. The camping was great, and I loved my night sleeping in such an extraordinary cave with a lovely fire at the entrance, so as not to smoke myself out. In all, it was truly wonderful and unforgettable experience.
A run now finished, I caught the ferry and made my way back over to the coast where I left off. At this point, I was unable to afford any ferries to take me to Jura and Islay, so I cracked on, heading north in the direction of Oban. It was on this stretch that I really started to see what Scotland had to offer. In no way of startling beauty, it was simply stunning. Slowly but surely, the bigger hills began to morph into sizable mountains. To the west, I started seeing more of the inner Hebrides Isles coming into view. Even the poor weather had started to turn element, and I was blessed with some warmer days as well as some incredibly wet ones. The stretch to Oban had its challenges, and never I had been so happy to have made the decision to learn how to forage. I'd leave small towns with the 2 pouches on my side, on my Bergen full of dog food to make sure I never ran out for jet, while carrying only vegetables and stock for myself to eat alongside my main source of nutrition, shellfish. Well, it's not turning. Darker. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good night's sleep. Stay well, everyone.